The following is an interview I had with Trinidadian-born author Lance Dowrich, author of A Plethora of Dead Ends. Good afternoon, listeners, and welcome to our podcast at this time. Today we have joining with us established author Mr. Lance Dowrich. One of the books, or rather the book in particular that interview would be centering around is the topic of A Plethora of Dead Ends. Mr. Dowrich, before we get into the interview, I'm just curious about the title of the book. What was the inspiration for this?
Well, after putting together the collection of short stories, I really did not have a name, but I wanted a name to come from the stories themselves. So in looking at the very first story, which actually the first story in the book was the last story written, I took the name from the street where most of the stories are centered.
Yes, correct is right.
So that Plethora of Dead Ends jumped out at me as the name for the book, because I wanted, firstly, the intent was to have stories centered around the street where most of the characters lived, or the main character lived.
Okay. And from my reading, they were a really colorful bunch of characters, each with their lives and interactions interwoven. Of the characters in the book, which one did you enjoy writing the most?
Well, Ethelbert G. Sandiford. Ethelbert was really the inspiration for the book, because his story, Ethelbert and the Free Cheese, was at the heart of or underpinned the theme for the book. Because of him, the other characters evolved. Ethelbert, I really enjoyed writing about him.
And actually, I enjoyed reading about him as well, because I think for a portion of the book, he was pretty much the underdog, but he kind of had his day.
Correct.
All right. But how did you go about putting it together? And by putting it together, I mean it seems like it was a series of short stories. I mean, is it that you sat down and just said, "Here, so I'm just going to write a series of short stories," or did you plan the characters before everything came together, and then after everything came together, you said, "You know what? I'm going to put all of these in the same book since all of these characters are related"?
Well, the process really started with the story Ethelbert and the Free Cheese copying the prize for the Read for the Caribbean in the Commonwealth Short Story Prize in 2016.
Yes.
Now let's go a bit further back. I wrote that story in November 2000. And I never did anything with it. So after submitting it to Commonwealth and winning, I was asked to write a story as one of the winners for the Ada magazine, which is the online magazine of the Commonwealth Foundation.
Okay.
So immediately, therefore, that happened between March and August of 2016. I wrote In and Out the Dusty Window.
Okay.
Which was an extension of Ethelbert, his mother, Tanty Lucy, and his brother and sister, Earl and Jackie, and other characters, of course. So after writing In and Out the Dusty Window, I then wrote a couple more about Ethelbert. And since then, I made up my mind in 2016, I'm going to write a short story collection about Ethelbert.
Okay.
So each subsequent story followed on the theme, with the exception being the altruistic shenanigans of a narcissistic coconut king, which is really Ethelbert's cousin.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting.
So Ethelbert G. Sandiford was the inspiration for the book, and this is my first book.
Okay. I mean, were there any areas of your life that you drew inspiration on for this book?
Well, actually, yes. As a young man, at age 8, I joined the St. Paul Servers Guild. So Ethelbert in church reflected some real-life occurrences.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so I was part of the St. Paul Servers Guild, and that I drew inspiration from the many characters who were part of the St. Paul Servers Guild to put that together.
Okay, I remember reading the account, and it was interesting. It was really interesting.
Yes. Yeah, Ethelbert wanted to swing that thurible. and he swung it all right.
I mean, aside from Ethelbert and some of the shenanigans he was involved in, when persons go through your stories, is there anything that you would like for them to take away when it is that they read these stories?
Yes, deliberately, I want everybody to recognize that each one of us has our own stories. And the fact that we grow up in the Caribbean, we are open to some really happy memories, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but every Caribbean country. And consequently, everyone should recognize that their lives are rich and stories are there to be told. So I'm hoping that people would see aspects of their lives in my stories.
Actually, I myself, I really liked most of the stories in the book because I found a lot of it was relatable. And because a lot of the things that you spoke about in the book, I mean, I could relate to as a young man growing up, etc. I think there was a joke about the Pond's cream. And when I read that, I was like, yo, I get that. I got the joke about the Pond's cream. I got it.
Yeah, the vanishing cream, yeah.
Vanishing cream. Because
Yeah,
I had
Pond's vanishing cream.
yeah, I had grandmothers and they who used to use Ponds. So when I read that, I was like, you know what? I know that. I know that. And with that, because it was relatable, because I read that, it became relatable. And because it was relatable, it felt kind of personal. I felt I kind of like, the book felt, how do I put it? I'm not too sure if to say if it's personal, relatable, if it's just, it was kind of like my own. I could say, here's what I know that I experienced that, so I know what the author is talking about. So yeah, that
And
made
great, and Kevin, I appreciate that. That is I really want every reader to be able to say that about at least one story.
and I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about interviewing the other authors from the region as well, because by going through these stories, a lot of us are encouraged to read more. I was actually talking with another one of the authors, and just to digress a little, we were talking about how it is that reading isn't as popular as it used to be. But sometimes, if it is that we want to encourage persons to read, we should encourage them to read nearly anything they could put their hands on. And when it is that you have accounts like this that are relatable, that persons could see themselves in or in the place of characters, I mean, it's a good encouragement to get persons started, being more involved in reading going forward. So,
Well said, well said. There's reading. The thing about reading is to encourage young people to read. You should encourage them to read everything: comic books, newspapers, storybooks, factual books, and they should be encouraged always to read. And one good thing about reading is that sometimes you don't recognize it, but we read all the time. We read social media posts. We read cornflakes boxes. We read instructions to put together a weed whacker or a blender, but we read all the time. But we need to encourage young people to read any and everything at an early age, and where we can expose them to stories about themselves or the environment that they're in. As you said, it's relatable, and that should spark an interest to continue reading.
a little more, well, I mean, we've spoken about the book for a bit. Let's talk a bit about you. When it is that you're putting together this book, were there any skills that you think were necessary more than others? Like research, persons who are proofreading, anything like that? Any skills that were greater than others when it came to putting together a project like this?
Well, I have a few people I would ask to read my stories. I rely firstly on my ability to write, my understanding of grammar, and I try as much as possible to ensure that each line is what I want it to be. So I have an eye for that kind of detail, which of course works well when I'm writing a story. But I don't have full-time proofreaders.
Okay.
So therefore, I rely on feedback from many people or from a tight group of people for each story. And then at the end, I try to get assistance to reread it, because obviously when you're looking at words over and over, you may miss some things.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned some of the skills that you had, like grammar is one of your strong points. I mean, having said that, tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, where did you grow up? What is your education background? And did you do anything before you became a writer, or do you write full time? I know that's a bunch of questions. You could answer them, however, in whichever order you see.
Sure. Well, firstly, I don't write full time.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I'm employed elsewhere. I'm employed at this time with Caribbean Airlines, and I write on a part-time basis. But if we go back, I attended school in San Fernando, that is primary and secondary school. Schools. I attended San Fernando Boys Roman Catholic School on Harris Promenade.
Ah, okay, okay.
And the Presentation College San Fernando.
Oh, you're a press man, man. A press man.
Well, is there another school at yeah, sorry about that. That's just so from very early I knew I wanted to go to Pres, and Presentation College had a very rich, expressive culture. Always. But I attended Presentation College from 1978 to 1985. And in that period, we had numerous opportunities to be involved in the arts. I sang calypso in school, so I composed my own calypsos.
Ah, okay.
And therefore, we had a very strong arts program generally. And we were doing book reports on Form 1, Old Man and the Sea, Ways of Sunlight, The Pearl, and reading was a heavy part of the curriculum. But at the same time, when it came to writing calypsos, we had tremendous encouragement from our teachers, Mr. Anthony Limac, who is now deceased.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was a critical part of that. And in writing calypsos, I found ways to express things, well, to music, but at the same time, I really enjoyed putting together calypsos. And then, of course, one had to write GP for A-levels. And writing GP was an eye-opener for me because it was then that I really came into my own in terms of writing. So my school career was an important foundation for me as a writer.
Okay, okay. I mean, you mentioned Presentation College, and I mean, Presentation College was a pretty popular school. I think two of our prime ministers, well, us being Trinidadians, you know, two of our prime ministers actually came from Presentation College, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of interesting. So Presentation College seems to be you could say like a workshed for leaders and persons who make contributions to society.
And we have quite a number of singers who have come from Presentation College San Fernando.
Oh.
Yeah, Franz Lamkin, Delamo the Calypsonian, Marshall Montano, Kes Diffenthaler.
Oh, I forgot about those, you know. I forgot about those.
Right, a very expressive environment. Very, very, very.
Ah, okay, okay. I mean, in addition to those things, I could see how it is that your background in composing calypsos would have contributed to your work, because again, when I'm going through the book and I'm seeing some of these statements put together, I'm like, you know, this is really interesting. This is really well put together. I mean, the story is okay, but you see this particular phrase here, this is really interesting. And I could appreciate that. And I'm thinking that probably in your experience as a composer or wordsmith, if you want to put it like that, all of those things would have contributed as well.
Well, I want to add to that, Kevin. I mentioned Presentation College. The culture of Presentation College is one where there's tremendous, and I mean tremendous, give and take. As a matter of fact, there are some guys whose lives, they made lives of everyone so much richer because the amount of nonsense that they spoke every day, you couldn't help but learn from it. So I was really happy to be part of that.
Yeah, the secondary school experience would have been something. So we spoke about the book. We spoke a little bit about yourself. But we could talk a little bit about the publishing process, because as persons who try to put together material locally and talking to more and more persons, and I understand that for some persons, you know, it isn't as smooth as they would like it to be, the publishing process. I mean, when it is that you had to get your materials published, was the process seamless? Was it a headache? I mean, can you describe it?
It was a very smooth process. I dealt with a publisher in India, and the publisher, after submitting my manuscript, the manuscript was reviewed and then sent to me a couple of times, literally 2 times, to ensure that I was able to review and answer their queries.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a publisher from a different country and culture,
Mm-hmm.
there were some words that they just needed clarification on.
Okay.
Words that, of course, are unique to us. Words like juve and jab jab. They would want to, they wanted clarification on those words. But I recognized then and there that the editors were really good. Their command of English was excellent. And issues of subject-verb agreement were dealt with quickly. Not that there were many, but they were able to see some things that I didn't see. And it says, therefore, that for anyone who wishes to get into publishing a book, your foundational English language skills are critical. And that helps to make the process faster.
Okay. I mean, having said what you just said there, I mean, that being, the publishing part of it, for anybody who's listening to this podcast right now, who would have read your book and said, here's what, I've seen what Lance did here. I think it's doable because I think I could write stories that are relatable to persons. If it is that a person wants to embark upon a similar project like yours, what advice do you see yourself giving them?
Well, the advice I would give is try to write for some competitions just to establish a particular rhythm and of producing stories. If one does not have a fixed schedule that is of deadline dates, one may find that a project could take inordinately long. So therefore, I have maintained the approach to look for short story competitions, which allow me to focus on getting stories completed by particular deadlines. And therefore, once I get into the process, I spark my creativity towards completing it in time for the deadline.
Wait, okay, that's a different approach, man. I mean, you challenge yourself with that. You set yourself up. So it's either sink or swim.
Yes, and then I have some objectives. I have some clearly stated objectives. I want to finish another book this year.
Okay.
I'm also working on a novel for next year.
Okay.
And therefore, because of that, I challenge myself to keep to those schedules and get those projects completed.
Okay. I mean, it sounds really interesting, man. And I like that kind of energy that you're putting into the book. And I could only expect, and I look forward to hearing positive things. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. You could tell us a little bit about the book that you're working on. Is it going to be something related to this first one, or is it going to be something different altogether?
No, it's going to be similar. I'm putting together another book of short stories, and that is a quick win for me. And therefore, but I'm also doing that simultaneously with working on a novel.
Wow.
And therefore, it means the short story collection allows me to get another book out and ensure that the people who like the first book have the opportunity to get more stories.
Okay.
I don't want to have them waiting for 2 years.
No, I get that. You want to satisfy the public because we like the first one. Hey, give us more. Yeah. Okay. Well, and that pretty much brings us to the end of our interview at this point in time.
Okay, great.
So, I mean, Lance, it was really a pleasure having you, and I really look forward to talking to you because, like I said, when I read your book, I really enjoyed it, and I even shared it with a couple of friends because, like I said, it's not often we read books and from authors that we can see as relatable, that we can look and see and point and say, here's what we know what the writer is talking about because we're a bit more invested, and probably that was the word I was looking for from the jump. We're a bit more invested in the books that we're reading because it's not from someone abroad. It's something that we can relate to here.
Kevin, I appreciate that. That feedback means a lot to me. I really need to hear how people, what people take away from the book, and the fact that you have found it relatable and you have shared it with others who have also found it relatable. It's an important bit of feedback for me. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, glad to give it. And I'm glad that it's helping you with your future books because we're looking forward to it. I'm one of the persons who are sitting, waiting for the sequel.
Okay, and I'm really working hard to make sure it's out in 2022.
Okay. Would it be available in the same formats, hard copy, Amazon, Kindle, anything else?
That is the attempt. Amazon remains an important retail outlet for anyone who has a book now. And by the same time, in Trinidad and Tobago, there are a number of people who purchase hard copies from the traditional outlets. So I cannot ignore that.
If it is I wanted to get a copy of your book, I mean, which stores sell it locally in Trinidad and Tobago?
Paper-based bookstore at Hotel Normandy.
Ah, okay. Yes, yes.
And Scribbles and Quills at Gaston Street, Chaguanas.
Ah, okay. All
I
right.
have a couple of non-traditional outlets, House of Creative People at Atlantic Plaza, Point Lisas,
Mm-hmm.
and at the Fonclair Enterprises Lotto Center and gift Lotto Center and gift shop, Fonclair on Dutton Street, San Fernando.
Okay. Well, now I know where to get my copies now.
Excellent.
Okay. It was a pleasure having you, Lance, and that brings us to the end of our interview at this time. So
Thank you for the opportunity, Kevin.
Okay.
Have a great afternoon.
Okay, you as well, Lance.
Bye.
You've been listening to Tropical Literature Creators. If you've liked content or heard something of interest, reach out to us. Reach out to our authors. We enjoy hearing from you. Our listenership. Follow us on social media. Visit our website.